My name is Sabrina Hale, and for the past decade, I've spent every Thanksgiving watching my mother shine the spotlight on someone else. No matter what city we were in or how long I'd been gone, the script never changed. My younger brother Jared was always the headliner, and I, despite everything I had built, was just part of the quiet background noise. The table was set like a spread from a lifestyle magazine. Fine silverware, ivory napkins folded into fans, a candle centerpiece that smelled faintly of cinnamon and perfection. Jared sat at the head of the table, grinning like the world was exactly as it should be. Mom, Elaine, lifted her wine glass like a conductor about to cue the orchestra. "So," she said, voice lilting with excitement, "Jared just closed on a gorgeous new home. 5 bedrooms, walk-in closets, a stunning backyard. It's such a smart move at his age." Aunt May gasped. Cousin Tessa clapped softly. Jared gave his best humble smirk, not even a glance in my direction. I took a slow sip of wine, already bracing for it. Then came the cue I'd been fed for years. Elaine turned to me, her voice sweet and pitiful, like wrapping an insult in velvet. "Sweetheart, when are you going to finally settle down?" I set my glass down gently, adjusted my napkin, and smiled. Not the smile they were used to. Calm, steady. Sharp enough to split the room in half. "I already did," I said. Elaine blinked. "Did what?" "Settle down," I repeated. "I just didn't invite anyone who doubts me." The fork slipped from someone's hand. It hit the plate like a bell. Jared looked up, and for once, he wasn't smirking. And just like that, the entire dinner shifted. For years, I told myself it didn't bother me. The way Elaine, my own mother, could recount Jared's every step as if narrating a presidential memoir, while my life existed somewhere in the margins. I convinced myself that being overlooked gave me freedom, that if no one was watching, I could build without judgment, without limits. But deep down, being invisible in your own family leaves a mark, and Thanksgiving always found a way to press right on that bruise. I used to try. I brought homemade desserts, almond pear tartlets, spiced pumpkin loaves, recipes I spent nights perfecting. Elaine would glance at them, then say something like, "Oh, how creative," before shifting focus to whatever store-bought pie Jared had picked up last minute from some overpriced bakery. That was the script. Jared improvised, Elaine applauded. I prepared, and somehow it was always too much, or a little different. I remember the year I mentioned a project I was leading, a platform for secure financial infrastructure that was finally being tested by mid-sized banks. Elaine tilted her head and said, "That sounds complicated. Jared's office just started doing open concept, you know. He picked out the rug." So I stopped offering details. Let them think what they wanted. What they didn't know, what no one at that table had even bothered to ask, was that my company had gone public last year. I'd spent years building it from a laptop in a studio apartment to a firm valued at over $180 million. I didn't flash it around. No posts, no press clippings in the family group chat. My silence wasn't secrecy, it was self-preservation. This Thanksgiving, I brought the tartlets again. Golden brown, subtly sweet, with a hint of cardamom. I set them down next to Jared's pumpkin cheesecake still in the plastic container from Whole Foods. Elaine picked his up first. "Oh, how classic," she beamed. Then she glanced at mine. "These look unique." I just smiled. I wasn't here to compete. I was here to end the show. So when I answered her question, I already did. I just didn't invite anyone who doubts me. The room didn't know what to do. Silence bloomed across the table like frost. Tessa stopped chewing mid-bite. Aunt May reached for her wine with the grace of a woman trying not to faint. Jared's jaw tensed just slightly. Elaine blinked like she'd missed a cue in the performance. "What do you mean, Sabrina?" I folded my hands, rested them on the tablecloth. "I mean, I bought a home, last fall, just outside Austin." The words were simple, plain. But in this house, where everything about me had been an afterthought, they rang out like a siren. Elaine's eyebrows lifted. "You bought a home?" "Since when? Why didn't you say anything? There was never an opening, I replied. Between all of Jared's smart moves and open-concept renovations, it just didn't seem relevant. My voice was steady, not sarcastic, not bitter, just resolved. Jared chuckled under his breath. That's cute. Must be a nice little condo or something, huh? He always did that. Shrunk things before they could grow. Shrink me, shrink my voice. I looked at him, no longer blinking away the past. Actually, I said, it's a house, 4 bedrooms, detached guest suite, wine cellar, just over 4,200 square feet. The shift was immediate. Elaine's fingers froze mid-reach. Tessa's mouth opened just slightly. Jared's chuckle died before it ever really started. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just let the silence do the work. Elaine tried to regroup. Well, that's certainly a lot of space for one person, isn't it? It was her old reflex. Reframe, reduce. Remind me that a win not shaped by their template didn't count. I took a sip of wine. Maybe, but it's paid off. No mortgage, so it's not exactly a burden. Her hand flinched. Jared's knuckles turned white around his fork. And just like that, the version of me they had clung to for years, Sabrina the workaholic, the loner, the one who never quite figured it out, began to dissolve. Elaine swallowed hard. You paid all of it? Outright? I nodded. Last year, just after the IPO. Aunt May blinked like she didn't know what IPO meant. Tessa suddenly seemed very interested in the crust of her roll. Jared shifted in his seat. Why the secrecy? I tilted my head. Was it secrecy or was it just not being asked? He didn't respond, but his silence said enough. Elaine tried to smile. Well, Jared's home is lovely too. It's in such a desirable neighborhood. It was a scramble, a life preserver. I watched Jared inhale deeply, readying himself to reclaim the room, but he wouldn't get that chance. Not tonight. Jared leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the table like he was preparing to take back control. You know, he said, with a laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes, real estate's all about timing. I got a great deal. Sabrina's probably just catching up. I turned toward him, slow and calm. Is that what you think? He shrugged. I mean, you've always been kind of private about things. That's one way to put it, I said. Elaine jumped in, trying to reclaim the narrative. Well, Jared's home has a beautiful open-plan kitchen. It's got those, what do you call them? Sliding barn doors. And he has equity in it already. I smiled. Not the triumphant kind. The kind that says, you really want to go there? That's great, I said. So did you pay in full too? The table went still again. Even the sound of the HVAC seemed to hush. Jared gave a short laugh, forced, sharp. Of course not. Most people don't. That's not really how it works, Sabrina. I nodded slowly. Sure. Some of us just prefer not to owe anyone anything. Elaine's head turned from Jared to me and back again. She blinked, sensing the shift, but not yet ready to admit it. Jared's smirk faltered. What are you even trying to say? I didn't move. I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just answering the questions, like always. His fingers gripped his wine glass tighter, the stem disappearing between his knuckles. Elaine, now noticeably paler, placed her fork down gently. You're saying you paid for your house entirely? Yes, I said. Tessa, who had been quiet up to this point, whispered, Wait, that's, like what, over $2 million? 2.3, I corrected. The guest suite added some value. You could hear someone swallow across the table. Jared let out a stiff breath. That doesn't prove anything. Didn't think I had to prove anything, I said. But you're acting like, I'm answering your questions. You asked, he went quiet, but not before glancing at Elaine, looking for backup. She reached for her wine. Aunt May cleared her throat. So, you said you did an IPO? I nodded. Last year, Hale Secure Technologies. We provide encrypted financial platforms for B2B systems, mainly banking security. May nodded as if that explained anything. It didn't, but she was trying. Elaine squinted. But why wouldn't you tell us about any of this? We're your family. I held her gaze. Because no one ever asked. Not about my work, not about my choices, not even when I skipped Thanksgiving 2 years in a row. Elaine opened her mouth, closed it. Jared wasn't done. You think you're better than me because you bought a bigger house? Did I say that? I asked. His eyes narrowed. You're making this into some power play. I leaned back. No, you just assumed you had all the power. He looked like he wanted to throw his napkin. Instead, he sat forward, defensive and visibly flustered. Well, at least I didn't hide my life like some secret. I tilted my head. I wasn't hiding, I was just building something none of you cared to look at. Elaine's lips parted. That's not fair, Sabrina. Isn't it? I asked. You've praised Jared for buying furniture. I launch a security infrastructure company, and you ask if I've thought about settling down. There it was. The truth. And once it was out, it hung in the air like smoke. Elaine's voice cracked slightly. You've always been so distant. I had to be, to breathe. Jared scoffed. Sounds dramatic. I smiled. Tell me, Jared, how's your mortgage? He blinked. Excuse me? You said it yourself. You didn't pay in full. So, how's the mortgage? Elaine frowned. Sabrina? No, it's a fair question, I said. Since we're talking about homes, about equity. Jared's nostrils flared. It's fine. Define fine, I said gently. He glared at me. You want me to define mine? I asked. I have 0 debt. My company's revenue projection for Q1 just crossed 7 figures. My property taxes are paid through next year. I'm not competing. I'm clarifying. Elaine whispered. Jared? He didn't answer. You let her believe, I continued, that you bought your house outright. You let her tell everyone that. You stood there and said nothing. He slammed his glass down. Not hard, but loud enough to startle the wine. Okay, he snapped. I owe about $10,000. Happy now? Elaine inhaled sharply. Credit cards? I asked. He looked at me like I'd stabbed him. That's none of your business. You made it my business when you questioned mine. He was seething now, but still silent. Elaine whispered again. 300,000? I'm refinancing, he said quickly. It's just temporary. Like the time you took out that car loan and told us it was gifted? I added softly. Shut up, Sabrina, he growled. Or the business degree you never actually finished? Enough! The table fell still again. I didn't yell. I didn't even move. I just sat there, staring at a brother who had spent our whole lives living off assumption and projection, and a mother who'd built her pride on illusions. I'm not trying to humiliate you, I said at last, but you don't get to keep rewriting the script and then act surprised when someone edits it. Jared stood up. I don't need to sit here and be attacked. I nodded once. Funny, that's how I've felt for years. He paused, then walked out. The hallway echoed with the sound of his retreat. Elaine sat still. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. She looked like someone who'd finally read the fine print on a contract she'd already signed. Nobody spoke. Even the room itself seemed to exhale. Elaine's eyes lingered on the doorway long after Jared had gone. Her fingers stayed interlocked in her lap, like she was trying to hold something together. Maybe the evening, maybe her image of him, maybe herself. Across the table, Aunt May stared at her wine glass like it might offer her a script to follow. Tessa fidgeted with her fork, still not meeting my eyes. No one said a word. And for once, I didn't rush to fill the silence. Because that silence? It was earned. It was necessary. And it belonged to me. Elaine finally looked up. Her voice came small, almost apologetic. You really bought that house last year? I nodded. 18 minutes from here, up in Barton Creek. Her brows pulled together slightly. That's Jared's zip code. I smiled gently. I know. She blinked. But you never said a word, I tilted my head. What would I have said, Mom? That I moved into a neighborhood you told me was too ambitious for someone who works from a laptop? Elaine opened her mouth, then closed it. I let the pause stretch, let the weight of the years settle into the space between us, the Thanksgivings. I sat quietly while Jared's latest mediocre achievement was applauded like it solved climate change. The moments I wanted to speak, but didn't. The moments I did and got dismissed. You always assumed I was behind, I said. You never asked where I was actually going. Elaine looked down at her lap. Aunt May cleared her throat. Sabrina, why didn't you tell anyone what you were building? My voice was even. Because no one really wanted to know. Elaine winced at that. I continued calmly. You asked about the weather, holiday plans, if I was seeing anyone. But not once did you ask what kept me up at night, what I was passionate about. You never asked if I was okay when I missed 2 years in a row. Elaine's lips parted, searching for a response that wouldn't sound hollow. She didn't find one. Tessa finally looked at me. You built all that from scratch? I nodded. From a rented studio in Phoenix with a $600 laptop and a stubborn idea. Her expression softened. That's incredible. I gave her a small smile. Thanks. Elaine sat straighter. You think I didn't care? I think you cared about the version of me you could understand, I said. The one who was easy to talk about at book club. The one who didn't make you question the choices you celebrated. She flinched, but didn't deny it. And I don't blame you for not understanding, I added. But I do blame you for not trying. Elaine's eyes were glassy now, her voice threadbare. I thought I was encouraging you. I thought Jared needed more attention. I gave her a long, quiet look. He got more than attention. He got belief. And that was it, the real difference. She looked at me as if seeing me not just for who I was now, but for who I'd always been. The girl who tried, who worked, who hoped someone would notice. I stood up slowly. No drama. Just the quiet scrape of a chair and the sound of fabric sliding down my coat sleeves. Elaine didn't stop me. She didn't ask me to stay. And maybe that said more than anything she could have. I reached for my bag, adjusted the strap. As I stepped toward the hallway, I paused by the edge of the table. Jared's empty chair looked strangely smaller now, like the illusion of him had finally collapsed under the weight of the truth. I turned back, met Elaine's eyes one last time. You want to know about my life? I said, voice low but steady. Next time, try actually listening. Then I walked toward the door. No applause, no dramatic goodbye. Just the quiet satisfaction of walking away, not in defeat, not in anger, but in full ownership of who I had become. Outside, the cold air kissed my face. It smelled like pine and possibility. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving anything behind. I didn't go straight home. I drove for a while, letting the city fade behind me, letting my thoughts catch up with everything I hadn't said over the years. Eventually, I found myself parked at the overlook near Barton Skyway, where the lights of Austin shimmered like a quiet answer to a question I didn't know I'd asked. I sat in the stillness, hands resting on the steering wheel, heart calm, not racing, not bitter, just still. For years, I let my silence be mistaken for passivity. I let their version of me sit unchallenged, because correcting it felt exhausting. I told myself it didn't matter, that success was enough, that peace didn't need permission. But tonight, I realized something important. It wasn't about proving anything, it was about reclaiming space, about letting the truth speak, even if it unsettled the people who had always been comfortable not knowing it. I didn't say what I said to humiliate Jared. He did that on his own, by building his status on half-truths and borrowed confidence. I didn't expose him to punish Elaine. I only gave her a mirror. What they saw tonight wasn't someone trying to win. They saw someone who had already won, and hadn't needed to tell them. Elaine's silence at the end said more than words ever could. She didn't stop me when I stood up. She didn't defend Jared when the facts sat plainly on the table. She just watched me, like she was seeing me for the very first time. And maybe she was. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the lights along my walkway flicked on, soft and warm. My home looked exactly the same, but something inside me had shifted. I stepped inside, dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door, kicked off my shoes, and just stood there. No audience, no applause, just hardwood floors, the hum of my refrigerator, and a quiet that felt earned. I brewed tea, walked barefoot into the living room, let my fingers graze the edge of the sofa I chose, the rug I bought, the windows I cleaned myself. I wasn't performing for anyone here. I wasn't shrinking to fit a role. I was just me, and that was enough. Not because they saw it now, but because I did. I took my tea to the window and stared out into the dark curve of the hills. Somewhere, back at that dining table, the lights were probably still on. But the old dynamic was flickering out. I hadn't just walked away from a dinner. I had stepped out of a narrative that never fit me, and into one I wrote myself.